Look, some of you have complained, I know, but there are aspects of this ongoing fallout from Malcolm Turnbull's book that, again, I just have to share with you. Let's start with a laugh. And again, it stems from Malcolm Turnbull's heavily promoted and very forgiving interview on the ABC on Monday night when, I'll remind you, the broadcasting corporation that you and I pay for made a special half an hour of primetime programming available for this book promotion. Anyway, in another long and sympathetic interview on the ABC yesterday, this time on Melbourne radio, Turnbull lashed out at News Corp, especially Sky News and The Australian, and he used this example.
You know, they were trying to sort of create the impression in The Australian today. I mean, it's so comical, trying to create the impression in The Australian today that the ratings of the 7:30 report episode that I was on last night with Lee Sales was a flop. I mean, it's the highest ratings they'd had, according to the producers, since 2015.
Yes, he's having a go at The Australian, but regardless, that is the former Prime Minister defending ratings for his interview on the ABC. Can you believe it? Well, here's the story in The Australian highlighting how the interview was beaten by a show about Lego, which is true, and that it didn't crack 1 million viewers, which is also true. It had a big audience, over 900,000, as you'd expect, on free-to-air prime time. But I noticed more people watched the normal 7:30 program the half hour before it. Still, the point here is that a former Prime Minister is in the media arguing, defending, boasting about television ratings. Who does that remind you of?
Tremendous success on The Apprentice, and when I ran for president, I had to leave the show. That's when I knew for sure I was doing it. And they hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place. And we know how that turned out. The ratings went right down the tubes. It's been a total disaster. And Mark will never, ever bet against Trump again. And I want to just pray for Arnold, if we can, for those ratings.
Yep, Australian politics has suddenly become Trumpian. And it goes further, I suppose, because like Trump, Turnbull is obsessed with the media. Trump calls out media animosity and fake news and infuriates journalists by talking to the public over, under, around and through the mainstream media by using social media, live events and front-on attacks. Turnbull courted the media when he was in office. He soaked up endless adulation from the ABC, much of the press gallery and what are now the 9 media newspapers. And he even effectively founded The Guardian Australia and handpicked a couple of his favourite journalists to run their political coverage out of Canberra. But now, after he came undone, he blames the media, well, more particularly News Corp, the owners of The Australian, a clutch of capital city dailies, of course, and this station.
News Corporation, Murdoch's company, is really more like a political organisation that employs a lot of journalists than a conventional, news operation. They defend their friends, they attack their enemies, they attack their friends' enemies, they don't hold their friends to account. It's very partisan and has become more and more and more so. And I mean,
supporting friends and attacking enemies. How unusual. I suppose Turnbull's attacking friends and enemies alike, at least. But anyway, this stuff is the sort of paranoid conspiracy theory that is rife on Twitter and in green left publications like The Guardian. It gives you a bit of an idea about Turnbull's political positioning and his sensitivity, not to mention his grip on reality. Not everyone at News Corp was enamoured with him and his government. Some prominent opinion leaders were, to be sure, some of his strongest backers. But of course, there was more criticism of Malcolm Turnbull at News Corp than on the ABC and the Sydney Morning Herald, because the Green left media were fawning and completely uncritical of Turnbull. Just the way he seems, I think, to want all media to be. But I tell you what, just about everybody at News Corp that I spoke to, indeed almost everybody in the country, I would say, wanted Turnbull to succeed. Because given the decade of political and economic strife we'd just been through, most people just wanted to see a competent government and a Prime Minister stick around for a while. But they were disappointed, of course. He disappointed a lot of people. Through the polls, we know how he disappointed voters, and we got the hard evidence through some shocking by-election losses that showed he was especially on the nose in Queensland. Turnbull tempted fate by effectively trying to do a climate deal with Labor again. So in the end, most crucially, he disappointed his own party room. Sadly, I guess all the blame shifting we're seeing now shows that in his heart of hearts, Turnbull disappointed himself too. As you know, I was Malcolm Turnbull's Chief of Staff for a year when he was opposition leader, and I have asked him on for a live interview on this program, but he's declined.